We're up to the fourth characteristic this week of the study through Kathy's book, Unshakeable Faith, looking at the life of the Apostle Peter and his faith to see traits that we can copy to increase our faith in Jesus as well. This week's trait is stay alert against temptations to protect what you value. So what do you value? Most of us value our family, of course, our friends, our health, our home, our possessions, and of course our relationship with God. That's the most valuable treasure we have. So how can we stay alert to protect the things we value? Well, Jesus told Peter when Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane, in Mark 14:38, he said, "Watch and pray that you do not fall into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak." So when are you most likely to fall into temptation? Often it's when our flesh is weak. So one way we can stay alert is to guard against our weak flesh. I like the acronym HALT, H-A-L-T, that AA uses. There are 4 triggers, physical triggers, that often make us weaker and more susceptible to temptation. The H stands for hungry. The A stands for anger. I've also seen it as anxious. The L stands for lonely. And the T stands for tired. Now, these aren't excuses to sin. After all, when Jesus was in the wilderness for 40 days fasting, we know he had to have been hungry and he had to have been tired, but yet he still did not sin. But these are 4 things that we can be aware of, and when we can, take precautionary measures against them to help us to stay alert and not sin. A second way to stay alert is to think about Jesus. It sounds so easy, but just focusing on him is one of the best things that we can do. Brother Lawrence is a French monk that wrote and lived in the 1600s, and he wrote this book called The Practice of the Presence of God. He really had this down pat. He took many of his ideas from 1 Thessalonians 5:16 through 18, where the Apostle Paul writes to rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances. Here's an excerpt from what Brother Lawrence wrote to one of his friends. We cannot avoid the dangers of life without God's continual help, so we should ask him for it ceaselessly. But how can we ask for help unless we are with him? To be with him, we must cultivate the holy habit of thinking of him often. The more aware we are of the Lord's presence and grace in our everyday moments, thinking more about him, the less likely we will be to fall prey to temptation. Here's a personal example, a small thing, of how not to do this. About a week ago, my husband Jeff was delayed at work on the night that he was supposed to come home and grill steaks for our supper. I was at home waiting, doing none of the stay alert things. I was getting hungry and I didn't need a snack. Could have just eaten a cracker. It probably would have helped it tremendously. I didn't pray for patience. I didn't remember that the presence of God was with me so that when Jeff got home I could extend grace to him for having to work late. No, I did none of those things. Instead, when he got home, my blood sugar was dropping, my attitude was rising, and I fell into the temptation of being grouchy. It was not a good night. God had given me ways out and I did not take them. So don't do that. Instead, stay alert, watch, and pray so that God will help you through any temptation you have. He promises to deliver us if we'll cooperate with him and let him do so.